To create this fully interactive animation triggered by my microphone input, I went to Sketchfab and downloaded this 3D model. The placement of its anchor point wasn't ideal, so I had to reposition it in Blender. Now that the speaker is in the right spot, I go back to SMODE and import it. Here, I selected the Import as Group option. I also create a camera, like that, and I also add a light. In this case, an environment light, and here I select daylight. I zoom in by holding Alt and using the scroll wheel or the middle click to move the camera forward. Apparently, the textures aren't imported here, so it's not a big deal, I'll import them manually. I hold down Alt and import my images into the corresponding passes. For the normal map, and then for the roughness. To make this object react to sound, I'll start by connecting my audio input to SMODE. So for that, I go to the Preferences panel in Edit Preferences, or use the shortcut F11. Then, in the audio input category, I'll connect my audio input to my device. In my case, it's this one. I click Apply and I exit the preferences. And here, in the device panel, I make sure I have good modulation. It looks good, so it's perfect. With this setup, I can start experimenting with some fun animations. This one looks interesting. It would be cool if it grew with the sound. To scale it with the audio, I'll apply a modifier. I'll use the modifier in Distort 3D Transform. I'm holding Ctrl plus Shift to be more precise in the deformation. So here it looks pretty good in X. I'm going to scale it up in Y. We'll be on the same ratio, 1.1 and 1.1. It's shifting a little, but that's not a big deal. I will reposition it. Okay, there. So what I will do now is connect the intensity of my modifier to my audio input. And I have this option to link to audio spectrum extractor. It created a link for me, and here you see, if I select it, I have the option to select the audio frequency I want. So I will use this small rectangle to precisely select the audio input from my microphone. Now we start to have something interactive. Okay, but we will add some more things. For example, we can make the speaker bounce to the sound as well. For that, I will use the same technique. I will just create a similar modifier on the group. So in Distort, I will create the 3D Transform modifier. I will set its maximum value, maybe go to 0.2, there. And so here, it's the same thing. I will connect it to my audio input. Either I create a new audio spectrum extractor, or I connect it to the previous one. That's what I will do. And you see here, if I expand my audio spectrum extractor, I see that my two 3D transform modifiers are connected. That means if I right-click on its target, it corresponds to this 3D transform, and the other is that one. My bounce is too strong. But it's not a big deal, because I can select the target that matches, and add a nice little mathematical operation, which we call the smooth function. So I will find that in the modifiers on my target, smooth. It allows me to smooth out the input and output. This is a bit excessive, so I'll increase the positive and negative speed values to 10 to speed things up. It looks better. But if I want a bounce effect, then what I will do is add another modifier. I will rename this one Up. I will create a new one, still on the group, Distort 3D Transform, and then I will look at what I have in my rotations. For example, I can rotate on the Z-axis just like this. Here, my little technique will be to right-click on this rotation parameter to create a back and forth loop. It gives me this animation. I select it, and then in its function, I will tell it not to go from 0 degrees 0 turn to 0 degrees 1 turn in 5 seconds, but rather to go from minus 15 degrees to 15 degrees in, let's say, 25 frames. So now my animation is created. And if I come over here, lower the opacity of my 3D transform, my animation doesn't work anymore. So it will be somewhat similar. I will connect the opacity of this 3D transform to my audio spectrum. Similarly, like the smooth function on up, I will copy it with Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V onto the new 3D transform. Now we have an animation that is interactive with sound.